Some enigmas never release their grip. They dig deep into a community, refusing to let go. In rural Dakota, along a stretch of Highway 112 where cornfields stretch endlessly beneath an open sky, one question tormented locals for 7 long years. What became of Officer Emily Carter? On September 14, 1991, this respected patrol officer simply disappeared without a trace. Her last radio check-in came at 3:47 p.m. 7 years later, what searchers uncovered would chill them to the bone. This wasn't just another missing person case. It was a story of secrets buried deep in small-town America, the fragile boundary between civilization and wilderness, and a discovery so unsettling it haunted everyone involved for the rest of their lives. Emily Carter was more than a familiar face in uniform. At 32, she had spent 8 years patrolling the lonely roads of Morton County, Dakota. Locals recognized her silver patrol motorcycle by its unique rumble, and they knew Emily for her warm smile and calm professionalism. Standing 5'6", with chestnut brown hair always tied in a precise bun, her uniform pressed meticulously, Emily was known for helping stranded motorists, sometimes covering the cost of their fuel herself. She carried jumper cables, a small toolbox, and emergency provisions in her bike's compartments. In 8 years on the force, she had never missed a shift, never lodged a complaint, and never lost her temper on duty. Her supervisor called her the most dependable officer he had ever worked with. Saturday morning, September 14, 1991, dawned bright and clear across Morton County, with a comfortable 70-foot and light southwestern winds. Emily arrived at the station at 6:45 a.m., 15 minutes early as usual. She went through her routine equipment inspection, testing her radio, checking her motorcycle tires and engine, and reviewing overnight reports. The desk sergeant recalled her stopping to chat about weekend plans. She intended to visit her parents in Jefferson City after her shift. At 7:30 a.m., Emily made her first radio contact with dispatch, reporting clear weather and normal traffic along her route. Her tone was relaxed and professional. Nothing hinted at trouble. The dispatcher later described it as just another ordinary Saturday morning check-in. Highway 112 wound like a silver ribbon through Dakota's countryside, connecting farming communities across 60 miles of rolling terrain. Emily's patrol route took her past golden cornfields, scattered cattle farms, and homesteads set back behind oak and maple groves. Weekend traffic was light, but varied. Families visiting relatives, farmers transporting equipment, and occasional tourists exploring rural America. Emily knew every mile marker, every side road, every farmhouse. She stopped routinely at Thompson's gas station for coffee and at Riverside Cafe for lunch. Summers were notorious for car breakdowns, and Emily had rescued countless motorists over the years. Most of her route was long, straight, and clearly visible, making it relatively safe for both patrol work and civilian travel. At exactly 3:47 p.m., Emily's voice crackled over the radio for the last time. She reported a Code 7 meal break near mile marker 143 by the old Riverside Bridge, roughly 30 miles northeast of the county seat, where farms gave way to rugged terrain. The dispatcher acknowledged her report and logged the time. Emily sounded normal, maybe a little weary after 8 hours on duty, but without any sign of distress. She was expected to resume patrol at 4:30 p.m., checking in with dispatch soon after. Then silence. Later, investigators would analyze that last transmission dozens of times for any clue of what was coming, and found none. Her final words were routine, professional, and ominously final. By 4:45 p.m., dispatcher Linda Hernandez noticed Emily had not resumed patrol. Following protocol, she attempted radio contact. Static filled the airwaves. At 5:15 p.m., Hernandez called again, her concern evident as she called Emily's badge number. Still no answer. The silence stretched, prompting other units on patrol to listen for their missing colleague. At 5:30 p.m., Sergeant Tom Reynolds tried to reach Emily directly. When his calls went unanswered, search protocols were activated. By 6:01 p.m., the first search units left the station, their light slicing through dusk. None of them realized they were beginning a hunt that would consume the community for 7 years. The silence that night would become Morton County's most haunting sound. 3 patrol units raced toward mile marker 143 as the sun sank below the horizon. Sergeant Reynolds coordinated from his cruiser, instructing officers to fan out along Emily's route. They reached her last known location near Riverside Bridge, but found no clues, no skid marks, no broken glass, no signs of accident or struggle. Emily's motorcycle and her distinctive blue uniform were gone. As darkness fell, local volunteers arrived with flashlights and lanterns. Farmers abandoned chores, neighbors packed food and coffee, and children stayed with relatives. Ditches were searched, abandoned barns inspected, and Emily's name shouted into the night. By midnight, nothing had been found. Dawn on September 15th brought reinforcements from 3 counties. State police helicopters scoured the countryside in grid patterns, while ground teams combed every dirt road and farm track. Deputies brought tracking dogs and specialized equipment. At Miller's gas station, the command post buzzed with activity as coordinators assigned search zones. News crews recorded every development, broadcasting the disappearance across Dakota. By noon, over 200 people were involved. Helicopters thrummed overhead. Dogs followed faint traces near the bridge, but quickly lost the scent. Despite the massive effort, the countryside seemed to have swallowed Emily without leaving a trace. The first week brought no answers, only questions that multiplied like shadows in the cornfields. Emily's family, stunned and desperate, offered every detail they could remember: her morning routines, favorite stops along the highway, even the color of her boots. Her parents, Martha and Daniel Carter, were consumed with worry, making daily trips to Morton County from Jefferson City, trying to offer any help. Friends organized search parties, posters went up in every nearby town, and the local police station became a hub of anxious activity. Every lead ended in a dead end. Every witness report contradicted another. It was as if Emily had been swallowed whole by the countryside. Investigators pored over every detail. Roadside cameras were checked, though few existed in 1991. Neighbors interviewed, and abandoned properties scoured. Nothing. There were no signs of robbery, struggle, or abduction. Her motorcycle, her badge, even her personal items were missing. Morton County, normally quiet and predictable, became a maze of suspicion and fear. Some whispered about fugitives from distant states, others about animal attacks, and a few muttered superstitiously about cursed roads. Yet no theory fit. Every hour Emily remained missing deepened the mystery, and with each passing day, hope began to fade. Months turned into years. Search efforts waxed and waned with seasons and resources. Helicopters and dogs could only cover so much ground, and leads often dried up before they could be investigated. Emily's disappearance became a local legend, the kind of story whispered over kitchen tables and around backyard bonfires. Tourists sometimes asked about the haunted stretch of Highway 112, unaware that it was the very place a dedicated officer had vanished. Families spoke cautiously. Teachers told students with hushed tones, and the local sheriff's office faced the grim reality that this might never be solved. Then, 7 years later, the unimaginable happened. A group of hikers, exploring an overgrown trail near the old Riverside Bridge, stumbled upon an object partially buried under moss and soil. At first glance, it seemed like a piece of discarded farm equipment. But as they cleared the earth, the unmistakable shape of a police motorcycle emerged. Rusted, overgrown, and almost fused with the forest floor, it bore the faded insignia of Emily Carter's patrol unit. Near it, fragments of her uniform were entangled in vines. The discovery sent shockwaves through Morton County and beyond. It was proof that Emily's fate had been intertwined with the land she had patrolled, but it raised far more questions than it answered. Experts were called in to examine the scene. Forensic teams carefully documented every detail: tire imprints, disturbed soil, and remnants of Emily's personal items. Yet no clear explanation emerged. There were no footprints leading to or from the site, no evidence of a struggle, and the natural erosion of the forest had hidden any possible clues. The mystery deepened. How could a trained officer, known for vigilance and survival skills, simply vanish, leaving only rusted metal and decaying fabric? Morton County faced a chilling realization. The land itself seemed to hold secrets no human could uncover. Emily's family, still grieving but resolute, worked alongside investigators to piece together her final moments. Memories of her voice, her kindness, her routine. Each detail became a lifeline in the darkness of uncertainty. Local authorities organized a memorial at Riverside Bridge, marking the spot where her radio had last connected with the world. Though the motorcycle had been found, the answers remained elusive. The community struggled to reconcile the image of a dedicated officer patrolling familiar roads with the harsh reality of her disappearance. The story of Emily Carter's disappearance became more than a missing person case. It evolved into a cautionary tale of isolation, mystery, and the hidden dangers of rural America. Families spoke of it quietly. Teenagers dared each other to pass the stretch of Highway 112 at night, and journalists revisited the case with new theories and cold leads. For 7 years, the question remained: what truly happened on that clear September day? And even when fragments of her life were uncovered in the forest, the answer seemed as distant as the endless horizon over Morton County's cornfields. By the time the motorcycle was found, Morton County had grown accustomed to whispers and unanswered questions. But the discovery reignited hope and fear. Investigators returned to the case with renewed determination. Specialists examined the rusted frame, the fragments of uniform, and the surrounding soil, looking for even the smallest clue. Forensic analysis suggested that the motorcycle had remained untouched for years, yet no natural explanation fully accounted for its position in the dense undergrowth. It was as if the forest itself had conspired to hide it. Detectives revisited eyewitness accounts from 1991, searching for details overlooked or dismissed. Old letters, notes, and incident reports were scanned for patterns. One witness remembered seeing a strange figure near the highway the day Emily vanished, a silhouette that didn't match any resident of Morton County. Another reported hearing a low, metallic hum from the fields at night. None of the tips led to a solid lead, but collectively, they painted a picture of an ordinary town caught in an extraordinary mystery. Emily's colleagues in the police department struggled with disbelief. Officers who had trained and worked alongside her were haunted by the thought that she could vanish without a trace. They pored over records, reviewed patrol logs, and even tried to retrace her final route on foot. Every street corner, every field, every bend in Highway 112 was examined with painstaking care. Yet the mystery persisted, defying logic and conventional explanation. In the following months, local media descended on Morton County. Journalists interviewed families, investigators, and townspeople, and the story reached national attention. Documentaries were filmed, theories debated, and amateur sleuths joined the effort online. Some proposed elaborate schemes involving kidnappers or rogue agents, while others speculated about a darker, almost supernatural force at play. The forest seemed to hold its secrets tightly, and for those who knew the land, there was a growing sense that Emily's disappearance was more than a tragic accident. It was a puzzle the world was not meant to solve. Meanwhile, Emily's family refused to give up. They coordinated search efforts with volunteers, examined old trails, and even employed private investigators. Every fragment of information became precious. Each detail was examined for patterns, no matter how small. And slowly, an unsettling theory began to form. What if Emily hadn't simply disappeared? What if she had been drawn into something hidden, something tied to the land itself, something that no one had expected? By the end of the year, the case of Emily Carter became a symbol of both loss and obsession. Morton County residents, once complacent in their rural routines, now spoke of the highway and the bridge in reverent whispers. The land had claimed a life, and in doing so, it had claimed the collective imagination of a community. And though years had passed, one question lingered in every mind. Would the truth ever surface, or would Emily Carter remain forever intertwined with the mystery of Morton County's quiet, endless fields? As winter approached, the once tranquil fields of Morton County took on an even more foreboding air. Frost glazed the grass, and long shadows stretched across empty roads. Yet despite the cold, search parties continued to comb the outskirts of the forest. Volunteers reported strange occurrences, footprints that led nowhere, sudden whispers carried by the wind, and glimpses of movement among the trees when no one should have been there. Each discovery deepened the sense that something unseen was watching, waiting. In town, rumors swirled faster than the snowstorms. Some claimed Emily had stumbled upon a hidden path into an abandoned underground facility, perhaps used decades earlier for secret research. Others whispered about an old legend, a creature said to roam the forest, stealing those who dared venture too close. Law enforcement dismissed most of these tales as fanciful, yet the unease among residents was undeniable. Even officers who had seen it all were shaken by the eerie coincidences, personal belongings found scattered in the woods, inexplicable sounds recorded on patrol radios, and the occasional fleeting glimpse of a shadowy figure near Highway 112. Meanwhile, forensic teams continued to examine the motorcycle and its surroundings. Advanced scanning technology revealed traces of a material not native to the area, a strange metallic residue embedded in the soil around the frame. Experts debated its origin. Could it have been part of a larger machine, a device of unknown purpose? Theories grew wilder with each day, from experimental technology to something that defied explanation entirely. Emily's parents, meanwhile, grew more determined, their grief transforming into a relentless search for answers. They met with scientists, historians, and even cryptologists, hoping to piece together the fragments of a puzzle no one else could see. Every lead was followed, from old maps marking forgotten trails to diary entries detailing unusual events in the county decades earlier. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Something connected Emily's disappearance not only to the land, but to an invisible network of events stretching back generations. By the end of winter, the forest had become a place of quiet terror. Residents avoided the paths Emily might have taken. Night patrols were doubled. The sense of watching eyes, of secrets buried in plain sight, haunted the town. And somewhere, deep in the frost-covered fields and twisted undergrowth, the truth waited, silent, patient, and impossibly distant. Emily Carter's story was no longer just about a missing officer. It was about a mystery that had taken root in the very soul of Morton County, and no one could say how or if it would ever be solved. By early spring, the snow had melted, leaving behind mud-soaked trails and the scent of damp earth. The forest, once white and silent, now pulsed with life, and with secrets that refused to be uncovered. Small clues began to appear almost daily. A torn piece of fabric snagged on a branch, strange markings etched into the bark of ancient trees, and footprints too irregular to belong to any human. Detective Harris, who had returned to the case after months of leave, felt a growing unease. He reviewed every report, every witness statement, and every scrap of evidence collected so far. Patterns emerged, connecting places in the forest where people had vanished years ago to the areas Emily was most likely seen. It suggested not random accidents, but something deliberate, something methodical. One afternoon, a local hunter stumbled upon a small, hidden clearing deep in the woods. There, half buried under fallen leaves, was an old metal box. Inside, investigators found journals, maps, and notes, some written in Emily's handwriting, others in cryptic codes that no one could immediately decipher. The discovery electrified the town, sparking both hope and fear. Could this finally be the breakthrough that solved the case, or was it yet another layer of the mystery, deliberately planted to mislead? Meanwhile, strange sightings continued. Residents reported hearing voices in the woods, sometimes calling their own names. Shadows flitted between trees, always just beyond the edge of vision. Some believed the forest itself had become alive, feeding off the fears of those who dared enter. Emily's parents, armed with the journals, began to piece together what looked like a network of hidden pathways and secret rendezvous points. An intricate system no outsider could easily comprehend. The deeper the investigation went, the clearer it became that Emily's disappearance was only one chapter of a much larger story. Morton County's serene landscape had always held secrets, layers of history buried beneath fields and forests, waiting for someone persistent enough to uncover them. The town watched, tense and silent, as the searchers pressed on, knowing that each discovery could either bring Emily home or push them further into the shadow of the unknown. By late spring, the town was on edge. Every shadow seemed suspect, every rustle of leaves a warning. The forest, now lush and green, hid as many questions as it did wildlife. The journals found in the clearing had become a roadmap for those desperate to understand the truth, but they also contained warnings, cryptic and chilling. Emily's notes hinted at someone or something that had been orchestrating events in Morton County for years, manipulating paths, appearances, and disappearances. Detective Harris organized search parties, following the intricate map Emily had drawn. Some trails led to empty glades, others to caves hidden behind thick undergrowth. In one secluded area, the team discovered a small, abandoned cabin, its windows shattered and walls etched with strange symbols. Inside, a desk held more papers, photographs, and a single, tattered backpack. Among the photographs were images of children who had vanished years ago, Emily included. Someone had been documenting it all meticulously. Fear spread like wildfire. Parents kept their children close, hunters avoided the woods, and even the bravest residents spoke of the Watcher, a shadowy presence believed to oversee the forest. Harris, however, pressed on. He knew that stopping now could mean losing Emily forever. The deeper they ventured, the more it became clear that this was not merely a disappearance. It was a carefully constructed puzzle, designed to ensnare anyone who dared investigate. And then, just as hope seemed fragile, a breakthrough. Hidden beneath loose floorboards in the cabin was a journal bound in worn leather. It contained Emily's final writings, detailing secret meetings in the forest, coded messages, and hints of someone helping her from the shadows. Her entries painted a picture of courage and cleverness, but also fear. Fear that she was being watched, always. Harris read each page carefully, feeling the weight of every word. Emily had left clues, and if interpreted correctly, they could lead to her. The town held its breath. Every new piece of information brought them closer to the truth, but also reminded them how deep and dark Morton County's secrets ran. Emily's disappearance was no longer just a case. It had become a story of survival, ingenuity, and a chilling reminder that some mysteries are alive, waiting for those brave enough to follow them. Harris felt the weight of the entire town pressing down as he examined the last pages of Emily's journal. The entries were increasingly fragmented, filled with symbols, shorthand, and warnings of someone or something that always watched. One passage stood out, a series of coordinates that led deep into the forest to a place Emily called the Hollow. As the search party approached, the forest seemed to close in around them. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and every snapping twig echoed like a warning. Sunlight barely penetrated the dense canopy, casting eerie shadows that danced across the forest floor. Harris led the way, flashlight cutting through the gloom, heart pounding with the knowledge that they were finally close. They reached a clearing where the trees formed a perfect circle. In the center was a large stone, covered in moss and carved with intricate patterns. Beneath it, the earth had been disturbed, revealing a shallow hollow. Harris knelt down, brushing away leaves and dirt, and discovered a trap door, cleverly hidden. The team exchanged nervous glances, knowing that whatever lay beneath could answer every question or hide dangers they could not imagine. With careful hands, Harris lifted the door. Inside was a small chamber, dimly lit by a narrow slit above. And there she was, Emily. She was weak, scared, but alive, clutching the tattered remains of her journal. Relief washed over Harris, but there was no time to celebrate. The chamber had signs of struggle, and scratches on the walls suggested something or someone had been there recently. Emily whispered hurriedly, revealing the truth. She had been trapped by a figure who had observed the town for years, feeding off fear and secrecy. Her journal had been her way of leaving breadcrumbs, a code for anyone brave enough to follow. Together, they climbed out of the hollow, Emily leaning on Harris for support. The forest seemed to exhale as they emerged, as if acknowledging the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The town of Morton County would never forget the ordeal, but now there was hope. The Watcher had been outsmarted, and a young girl's courage had turned the tide. The mystery was far from over. The forest still held secrets, but one thing was certain. Emily had survived, and the town had a chance to heal, finally. The town of Morton County slowly returned to a fragile normalcy. News of Emily's rescue spread quickly, and the community breathed a collective sigh of relief. Yet whispers lingered about what truly haunted the forest, and the strange markings on Emily's journal remained a mystery. Harris often found himself revisiting the forest, retracing the paths that had led them to Emily. Each visit reminded him that some secrets refused to stay buried, that the Watcher, or whatever it was, might still be observing. But for now, the sense of dread had lifted, replaced by the cautious hope that courage and determination could triumph even over the darkest unknown. Emily, forever changed, became a quiet hero in the town's story. Her bravery inspired others, and she kept her journal close, a reminder of the dangers she had faced and the strength she had discovered within herself. And though the forest still whispered in the wind, the people of Morton County learned that survival, courage, and the bonds of community could illuminate even the darkest shadows. Some mysteries never fully vanish, but some victories, however small, leave a mark that time cannot erase.